It's time to talk sports, it's time for the show. When you hear this song on the radio, it's time to tune in, better act fast. Let me get that autograph. Potograph, Sports Talk Radio. Starting now.
Let's go! What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 123 of Let Me Get That Potograph. As always, my name is Drew, or the DH, and we have an awesome show for y'all today. It's been a while. I know it's been a couple of weeks, but lately it's been traveling to multiple different shows. As you guys know that follow on social media, we've been at the Dallas show. We also hit up the Philly show. So we've been quite busy, and apologize for not being able to get anything out before then, but it's just been insanely hectic. But we are returning today with quite an awesome show, and especially in the main segment with a very special guest joining us, one of my favorite podcasters, and we're really going to hop in the DeLorean and take a step back into 2016 and when the hobby changed and take a look at a lot of really cool stuff. But that, of course, is Kyle from Wax Museum Podcast. He's going to be joining the show a little bit later on today. But like I said, guys, great to be back. Great to be back doing what I love doing, which is Let Me Get That Potograph. I know I'm doing a lot of new shows, and there's some that aren't even out yet that haven't even been announced that are coming. But Let Me Get That Potograph's always, that's what started it all. That's what all this came from. And so, love doing it. Glad to be back. But the traveling and doing the shows was really interesting because it got me to take a look and really see a lot of different things. They were two very similar shows. Dallas, I think, was a little bigger, but I think they also had more room. The Philly show being in the casino, it was in a casino basement-like area where they hold conventions. It seems smaller, but I think it was actually probably just as big. But both of the shows gave me such encouragement for the hobby in multiple different ways. Look, I know we're down, like it's a quote-unquote downtime in the market. We're in it's an ebb and flow marketplace. It always has been. And right now we're in one of those downtimes where a lot of cards are down, although there are quite a few that are up and you can still make a killing going after the right things right now. But the entire industry as a whole, you're seeing quite a few things level out, drop down to more reasonable levels, which is also a very good thing because it's bringing new people in as well, and your cards are still selling for tremendous value, 10 times worse still than what they were last year. So, I mean, you're still up big if you were, collecting before and now selling, doing whatever it may be. But, things have kind of come down to earth a little bit. Topps Finest Baseball, I know, an incredibly awesome product with a great price point. Bowman came out with a wonderful price point this year. I mean, just a lot of different stuff. It brings new people into the hobby, and in all actuality, it gets more new money moving. And it definitely got the shows packed. The shows, both of the shows, Dallas and Philly, were jam-packed shows, start to finish. I mean, there was so much wheeling and dealing moving from $2 cards all the way up to $20,000, $100,000 deals. Multiple massive deals going on, but also just seeing the amount of transactions that were going on. Everyone's saying it's a downtime. Yeah, it might be on eBay. It might be online. The online aspect of everything might be down a little bit. That whole I want to sit at home and just online flip aspect, it might be completely down. But at the shows, you could get great deals. You could move, if you're a seller, you could move anything you wanted. People were buying left and right. I was blown away at the amount of movement that I saw that wasn't wax. Now, there was a ton of wax. A lot of big name companies, I'm not going to name their names, but they've literally been going on eBay and they've been controlling these prices for a long time. And it's obvious at the shows when they show up with their retail stacks because they've literally got like 50 55 cases of certain retail products. I mean, they're the ones controlling this stuff. They're the ones moving it. They're the ones hyping the prices up. And shocker, they're also the ones that allocated the most. So, it is what it is. But the wax was, relatively priced. I mean, there were some good boxes. I ended up grabbing a box at the very end that had a Juan Soto case hit gold auto out of 50 from Finest. Found some good deals on stuff like Finest. All the big products, all the big name products, it was really way above market value on a lot of that stuff. But there were a lot of deals to be made. There were a lot of sellers that were willing to work with you if you wanted to do bulk deals, which, with one of my projects, Certified Monsters, obviously we're always looking for bulk deals. There were tons of sellers that were more than willing to sell multiple cards in bulk deals and give you a great discount to where you're both making money and you're both happy. And it was nice to see so much of that going on, as opposed to it looking like a museum where everyone's just walking around looking, not really doing too much, just looking around, and that's it. That's what drives me nuts, when it full on turns into a museum and there's no action going on. But there was plenty of action at both of the shows. And another thing that I saw that was awesome, I loved it, was so many kids. So many kids. I say it all the time, guys. We spend a lot of our lives now, at least in the hobby world of our lives, in Facebook groups, online, on Instagram, things like that. But that's all. Where 95% of the people in it are people our age, people we went to school with, people that are, relatively our age or are in the same hobby. But not the children. Obviously, your account's not going to be filled with 20,000 kids. That's probably not what you want your account to look like, to be quite honest. And if it does, you might want to, change that. But one thing that I thought that was just great was I was seeing kids at the Dallas and at the Philly show that were out there after the show's closed, sitting out there in the lobby, just doing multiple different trades, tons of different stuff. It was awesome to see. I absolutely loved it. I know I touched on it on a couple of different shows and everything, but it was wonderful to see. But I saw it again at the Philly show. It was the same thing. There were kids everywhere. And then I also met 3 different dads and their sons who have started up business together, where it's really for the fathers wanting to teach their son about business, choosing baseball cards as a way to do that, and they're investing, money, letting him, make the sales, make the deals, whether it be buying into cards or trying to start doing breaking, whatever it is. I met 3 different ones just at the Philly show alone, and I thought that was so cool and that's so wonderful. And as a father, that's something that I want to be doing with my son. I want that. And it's a great way to teach him the lessons that, let's be honest, public school isn't going to be teaching you this stuff, even if you're in your business classes. It's not going to teach you what you need for the total real world. You probably need a little bit of both. I love my college degree. It taught me a lot, but I could have done just fine without it. But I love seeing, these father-son combinations starting so young, so early, and the passion in the kids' eyes. It was just tremendous. We had 2 guest breakers that ended up being 3 kids overall over at Vintage Breaks at the Philly show, and just them opening packs and getting to do it on camera. Watch the videos, because it's absolutely tremendous. Just the look on their face, the pure enjoyment, just the love of the hobby. Like when we even got to tell them that they got to keep a cello of Chronicles, they about shit themselves. It was amazing, and it's a beautiful thing to see, but it's something we forget when we're sitting in these rooms full of people our own age all the time, and we don't get out and see these shows. We don't get out to the bigger shows, maybe only the really small shows in our local area that, like I said, turn into basically walking museums of just looking around. You have to hit these big shows, which, speaking of big shows, guys, moving on from Philly, the National is back. The National is happening, and of course we are going to be there I cannot wait. It is going to be incredible. The National this year is going to be nuts. It's going to be the biggest National ever. I hope they have the security and the facilities and everything in place in Chicago to be able to handle this. And I also hope they make it a lot bigger, because they need to utilize the space a lot better than they did a couple of years ago. Because when it was there a couple of years ago, it was not only ridiculously confusing, but the layout itself made it to where walking where you would normally be walking, just it was totally wrong. It was set up backwards. And so I hope I put a lot of thought into this, as this is definitely going to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest National ever. And I could not be more excited. I'm going to be up there, of course, with the Vintage Breaks and the Wax Pack guys. We'll be doing Certified Monster stuff up there. I'll be doing a ton of Let Me Get That Potograph stuff, Hobby Hotline stuff, Let Her Rip stuff. A couple other things I can't announce yet, but that'll be happening. Tons of different things going on. It truly is going to be an awesome time. So if you guys are coming, please make sure to let me know. I'd love to meet you guys if I haven't already, or see you again. That's one of the best things about these type of events, is getting to see people that you only interact with online, or maybe just through trades and stuff the entire year. It's really cool to be able to see a lot of people in person, which is what's been so nice about the last 2 weeks. I think I've met 20-30 different people that listen to the show or one of the shows, and it's really cool, humbling, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely let me know if you guys are headed out. We'll try and get you maybe up on the main stage or something, as we do have a couple of main stage slots that we'll be discussing in the coming weeks. So a lot more information about that. But I do want to congratulate Tim from Signatures for Soldiers, as they were announced as one of the sponsors for the National, the charity sponsor for the National. So congratulations to Tim and everyone over at Signatures for Soldiers, as we'll be having Tim on here, hopefully here in the next week or so, to talk about Signatures for Soldiers, the National, what they've got planned, what that means to them, and what's going on, because they're hitting some pretty amazing milestones over there. I remember meeting Tim when he was literally a tiny little booth in the corner of the National that they tucked in, and now he's built something up to where they're one of the actual corporate sponsors. So super excited for Tim. So congratulations, Tim, and look forward to having you on the show here in a couple of weeks. But we're gonna move on now to the segment that, since Let Her Rip became a web series, the new segment that has taken the nation by storm, I guess, so to speak, Movers and Shakers. And we're going to break down a couple of guys. This week it's going to be the NBA Playoffs edition. I'm going to do an NFL edition, I promise. But as we get closer to the conference finals, and now that we're in the conference finals and we're getting very close to the finals, there's a couple of guys I want to spotlight on, as we haven't gotten a full chance to do that yet. And so I want to touch on them a little bit, and then we'll move on and go back into going through multiple sports. And I am going to do a football one with everything coming up with the NFL, since it's right around the corner, guys. It is not far away. But first up on Movers and Shakers is Cameron Johnson. I think Cameron Johnson's a future star. Now, I don't think he's a first-team All-NBA type stuff, but if this Suns team decides to stay together, which is a big if, Cameron Johnson could be something very, very special on this Suns team, or if they break up on another team. He was in college, and he's progressed tremendously, especially in these playoffs. You saw it throughout the year, but he injuries, little things like that, didn't use him too much. They've really slow rolled him out, but in the playoffs, the Suns seem to have just let him loose a little bit at times, and he's really performed tremendous, and I think he's going to be a great, great basketball player. When you look at his prices and you look at his rookies, they're they're next to nothing. I mean, you can get green prisms for $2, $3. Grade those, flip those. Those are, I mean, it's common sense. The stuff's gonna go up. They're probably, I mean, it looks right now at least, they could close the Clippers out tonight. I mean, you can just see that this is a Suns team that, in my opinion, could win the championship. And if they win the championship, oh, forget about it. All of these guys' stocks are going to go way up through the roof. But Cameron Johnson, being a rookie that's, a second-year player, but someone whose rookie cards are still fresh in everyone's minds and still in those common boxes where you see him all the time, he's somebody that could really see a pretty significant bump, especially if the Suns team goes on to, challenge whoever comes out of the East and possibly win a championship. The only problem I see is, and it's something that we're going to talk about with one other player at the very end today, is you see a lot of these guys, turn that killer instinct on, really start to turn everything up in the playoffs, that one season. And then when they get to next year's regular season, they're back to coasting through everything. And then when they get to the playoffs again, they can never really turn it back on. So, it is going to be up to Cameron Johnson to figure out, look, this is the intensity I have to figure out how to play with every single night. And no matter what, I've got to do it and I've got to perform on this stage. Whatever mindset you've got in to be playing the way you've been playing lately, that's what you've got to do for the entire NBA season in order to be that star that I think he can be. But on the low end, low cost, low entry into the investing aspect of the hobby, Cameron Johnson is someone that I think is an absolutely perfect one. But moving on, and speaking of movers and shakers, this dude moves and shakes backboards, and that of course is Suns center DeAndre Ayton. Now, when Ayton was coming out of college, Ayton was, he was the guy. He was the hyped up guy. He was the one that everyone wanted to talk about. He was the man in what was considered a weak draft class, which ended up being an incredibly strong draft class, possibly one of the strongest we've seen in a long time, depending on how a couple of players develop. But, he was seen as, supposed to be that guy. He was pretty much Zion before Zion in a way. But it took him a while to develop. The Suns were terrible. They were awful until they got Chris Paul. I mean, they still had Devin Booker. They still had everything until they got Chris Paul, a coaching staff, and they knocked it out of the park with a couple of drafts and a couple of trades. This was a terrible team. So he got right onto a terrible team, was losing every single game. That he was all they had, so all the pressure was on him. And I think, I just don't think he could handle it yet because he was a young kid. I think it was too much for him. Fast forward a couple of years, you put him on a team where he's one of the stars, but he's surrounded by other very, very talented, incredible all-NBA type players, Booker, CP3, and then role players such as Cameron Johnson, other players like that. You've got somebody that could turn into an absolute monster, an all-NBA first team, offense, defense, whatever. This man can do it all. His playoff stats are absolutely absurd. Against the Clippers, he's putting up 24, 19, 18 points. He's going 22 rebounds, 14 rebounds. He's averaging almost 2 blocks a game. I mean, this dude, he's playing 35, 36, 41 minutes. I mean, they're playing him all game long, and he is absolutely dominating. This man can do everything that you ask for from a modern day center, and his cards still, now they're starting to move now that they see what he's doing against the Clippers the last couple of games, but these cards were not moving whatsoever, and there's still a lot of growth to go on a lot of these cards. Maybe not, his top-notch RPA, National Treasure stuff, or Silver Prism PSA 10s and stuff, but when you look at other rookies and other things like that, there's a lot of room to grow on a lot of these rookies, and Ayton is somebody that, whether they keep the Suns together or not, this man is going to be a star on whatever team he is on. As I said earlier, the Suns team probably won't stay together for very long, but they're full of absolute superstars in the making. And superstars that were right in our face just for some reason we as a hobby and everybody refuse to acknowledge. Devin Booker can be thrown in there too, even though now he's being acknowledged because he forced you to. But that's where Ayton's at right now. I think Ayton is going to be something absolutely incredible. I think he gets absolutely no respect whatsoever and is someone that is well deserving of said respect. Now, one player that's on my opposite end of the movers and shakers list, and it's for really the same reason as Cam Johnson. I just don't think in any way, shape, or form he can keep it up. That man is Terrence Mann. Now, obviously, he has been putting up some absolutely incredible numbers. Yes, we know he's been doing a lot for the Clippers with Kawhi injured, but that's being the very key word. Kawhi injured. As soon as Kawhi comes back, which looks like it's going to be next year, unless they move him and unless they blow this Clippers team, all he's going to be is moving and shaking right back down that ladder to relative obscurity. I don't see him leading a team. Terrence Mann is a player that can come off the bench like a Reggie Jackson, a Drew Holiday, someone like that. That's a solid player. They can give you decent minutes. But where his stuff skyrocketed to off of a couple of games is absurd. Stay far away from that stuff. He's going to go back down to that level of a mediocre to good basketball player, and there's nothing wrong with that. That every single team needs that, and every single title team needs that, and every single one of those players that would be considered that are vital pieces to winning those championships. So in no way, shape, or form am I diminishing him in any way, but if the Clippers stay together, okay, he's behind Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. His cards are not going to be able to sustain that much value being a Clipper behind those two players. Okay, let's say they blow the Clippers up. He either goes to another team, which normally that consists of a lot of throwaway teams where he's not going to be featured in any way, shape, or form. And if he is, it's going to be featured in Sacramento, and he's going to be hidden behind a bunch of really talented players that need to go elsewhere. Or they keep the team together and he stays on this team. So those are the two options. Either way, I don't see him making that big jump to where his cards, where they jump to right now, they've already started to come way back down. That jump happened very quickly, and I think you're probably going to see a lot of chargebacks. But Terrence Mann, he can put stuff up. He can put numbers up, and he's talented. I think he's a great basketball player, but it comes back to that killer instinct. He's turned it on for the playoffs. He sees it. Kawhi's injured. This is my shot. Okay, well, you got your shot, young man. Take it. You've taken it, and it's been great. But once this series is over, and once you guys have gotten bounced, because you're not coming back 3-1 against the Suns. If they are, I don't know, I'll do something stupid on this show, because there's no way they're coming back and beating the Suns in this series. When you guys are bounced, when it comes back to next season, you've got to carve out a role on that team with Kawhi and Paul George healthy. Or you've got to carve out a role on that team as the leader of that team. And we're seeing teams, Houston, Kevin Porter Jr., putting up insane numbers, leading a team that's not that great. So what happens? Nothing with the card value. So Terrence Mann is one of those guys that I love the kid. And for a while there, I thought, maybe he is going to be of good value, but then I look at everything around him, and every circumstance that is around him outside of the next 2 weeks says run, because they're already down so far in the series. I don't think they can come back. So by the time you listen to this, they could already be bounced. And so that as soon as that happens, he's going to be going right back down to earth. So if he is someone you want to invest in the future, because if he does go to a decent team and he is featured as the third star, the third cog on a team, he can be a big star. If you believe in him, then just wait a couple weeks, because right now his stuff is just way too much. But I don't see him holding that killer instinct, and I think he's one of those guys that turns it off and unfortunately just never learns how to turn it back on. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of Movers and Shakers. And next week, guys, I promise next week we are going to be doing an NFL 2021 primer of Movers and Shakers. We're going to extend it a little bit, and we're going to go into some detail on a couple of guys from the 2021 draft class and second year guys that you really need to be paying attention to and that you need to be grabbing now, because once training camp starts and everyone's eyes are on them, it's going to be too late. You've got to start getting them right now. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Let Me Get That Potograph. And on the line, we've got a returning guest. He's been on the show a couple of times, hosts a podcast of his own, one of my favorites. If you're a basketball fan, it's a must listen to. Kyle from Wax Museum Podcast joining the show. Thanks so much for joining, man.
Hey, Drew, how are you doing today?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's playoff time. I love playoff basketball. I think it's so much different than anything else in the entire world. You can totally see when these guys turn it on, the killer instinct that comes out in some of these guys. Like, I love playoff basketball, so doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing the same, and I think not to say that individual NBA games don't matter, because we know they do.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a sense that these games matter. And that makes it, more enjoyable for us. It makes for a better product. It's all in all a good thing. So I'm very happy that, as you can imagine, that playoff season's here.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's been a good playoffs too. It's been a surprising playoffs. You've seen some teams that I think, we're on the precipice of greatness, and we thought they were going to really be something amazing, but, they were waiting to take that next step. They were a little bit off. You saw it kind of with Utah this year, and then some injuries hurt them. You're seeing it with Phoenix right now. You're seeing it with the Clippers finally coming together. You're seeing a lot of these teams really come together and take that next step forward.
Yeah, this is something, I've heard people say, well, the stars are already out of the playoffs and they're disappointed about that. But I think the big winner here is the NBA. Yeah. The fact that the stars are gone and we've got, great basketball. Now, there have been a few games here and there that haven't been so good, and right. That's expected. But really, the NBA needed something like this, because this was a big deal when Jordan left. Who's going to carry that mantle? Who's going to draw people in? And even though Kobe was there and there were guys like T-Mac and so forth,
right?
It wasn't as compelling a product. But if the NBA can position these guys to be ready when LeBron is gone, because guess what? That time is coming.
Yeah.
A lot of people might not want to come to grips with that, but that time is coming. Then we've got these young guys, and that's a good thing.
No, it is. And, I didn't plan on really touching on this with you, but being a basketball fan and, in my opinion, an expert in the hobby, when a lot of people don't realize that when LeBron's done, there's not going to be Panini cards for 15, 20 years of him. He's done. I mean, he's an exclusive signed athlete. When his stuff is over with, it's done. You're not going to have prisms of him like you do of Larry Bird and all these other guys like forever and ever. It's the Jordan treatment. He's gone. He's done. There's not going to be game-used relics in some of their National Treasures products that they can put in. There's not going to be all this cool stuff they can do. He's gone when it's done. And so from a hobby standpoint too, you see a lot of complaints about how many cards people have. And, that's another discussion for another time. But with LeBron itself, I mean, there are cards from, his 10th, 12th year that are very, very well worth picking up, because when he hangs it up, it's done outside of Upper Deck.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen, and maybe, I won't drag this part on too long, but if LeBron, let's say at the end of his career, if he signs a one-day contract with the Cavs or whatever,
yeah,
does that give Panini license to use his image for one more year? I don't know how they're going to work that. I don't know the legality of that. I don't, we haven't really worried too much about that with other players in the past, but LeBron would be one. If that loophole in fact exists, they're going to want to exploit that.
Oh no, absolutely. If there's any loophole that they can exploit, they're going to do it. But it's just when you see the fact coming up that there could be no refractors, there could be no prism, no anything along those lines. It brings into the fact that some of these LeBrons, these later year LeBrons, are some things some collectors, at least in my opinion, that aren't chasing rookies and stuff like that should really be chasing after, because I really think you're going to see a lot of his cards hold value beyond his retirement, simply because he's going to have, his small little upper deck things. And, that's about it.
Yeah. And I can assure people, you're going to get tired of seeing LeBron in a Nike warm up.
Yes.
Just like we're tired of seeing, and it's not old pictures of Jordan either. They'll have pictures of, 55-year-old Jordan wearing a hoodie. So, treasure these things and value these things while they're here.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't plan on touching on that, but we're going to move on now, because I wanted to have you on today because as soon as Ben Simmons finished costing me a ton of money earlier this week, and I still can't get over the thought process of what went through that man's head. But as soon as it was over, I hopped on Facebook to laugh at the people that get ridiculously angry over it. I just laugh it off and move on to the next. A lot of people, get angry. Card people in the hobby, they want to slam him, bash him. Everybody was just roasting the hell out of Ben Simmons. And I started thinking about Ben Simmons, and it brought me back to, the 2016 season, his rookie year, when he came into the league. And the way that Ben Simmons can almost be attributed to the hobby we have today and the seismic shift that we had in the hobby. Because back in 2016, it was exquisite. It was, it was right when licenses were ending, exclusive licenses were beginning and things like that. But it was also right when everything was exquisite. It was RPAs, it was jerseys. People wanted to experiment with weird, different things, not just an autograph. Like today, you just want that nice on-card auto. That's what you really want. Now, back then, it was really experimenting with the jerseys, the triple threads stuff was coming out and experimenting with things. But with Ben Simmons, he signs that Upper Deck exclusive. Well, that Upper Deck exclusive forced the entire hobby to basically decide, okay, well, we have to have one card that we consider his quote unquote, his Trout, his 2011
right.
update. Something has to be it. And it's not going to be the National Treasures base card out of 99, because there's 99 of them. There's got to be something. And so, I guess the collective hobby just decided to choose Prism, which was shocking to me, because up until then, anyone that knows the history of Prism was not a popular product when it came out. It was cheap retail stuff that was meant to be thrown in Walmart. And it has evolved into what it is today. But Ben Simmons, that Ben Simmons move, that signing of Upper Deck that day, can really be attributed to a seismic shift to where we are today with Zion, Luka prisms, everything like that. There is no Luka and there is no Zion mania. There is no Prism mania. There is no $2,000 boxes, which is a good thing. Or there's no, craze over silver prisms without this Ben Simmons move. When you look back at that time, what are your thoughts on 2016 and, Ben Simmons and his influence on the modern hobby?
Well, so the signing itself, I agree with you. I think it was a catalyst kind of for what we see now. What people need to keep in mind is that nothing happens in a vacuum. So right. Even though that was a catalyst, there were other events that kind of led up to that and other events that followed. A couple things I do want to point out real quick before we get to the Simmons signing. 2014, we had the Wiggins hype, was huge. Okay, I know, people think Andrew Wiggins is nothing now.
Yeah,
people were very excited about Andrew Wiggins then. So much so that Panini put his autographs in 2015 Immaculate Baseball product.
Yep.
There were Andrew Wiggins autographs in a baseball product because they wanted to move that baseball product. So he was a big draw for that. 2015 comes around. Karl Anthony Towns was the number one pick. He was a very big deal. It wasn't Jokic like some people will try to tell you. He was a nobody then.
No, Jokic is nobody.
And then Porzingis was not anybody really at first, but caught on quickly. By the time an early product like Court Kings came out, Porzingis was sought after as well. So now, as that's happening, there is some traction that's developing with Prism. So Karl Anthony Towns Prism's cards started to gain a little bit of traction. This is not to say they were huge, but there were people that were really going after them. So it had been building gradually. Okay. Now, then, as you mentioned earlier, 2016 happens, the summer of 2016, and the exclusive itself was an autograph and memorabilia exclusive, but it was mainly autographs. So technically, if Panini had wanted to, they could have made relic cards of Ben Simmons if they could get the game jerseys. Okay, so, at that point, Panini's probably strategizing, what are we going to do here? We don't have autographs. You can't make an RPA without an autograph. It's just an RP. So what are we going to do without the autograph? So I'm sure there were all sorts of ideas in their head about relics. And trust me, at that time, if there was a relic out there that they needed to go get, they would get it. So, for example, I'm pretty sure, I think Julius Randle.
Yes.
From what I've heard, he got hurt his first game. Panini went out and got that jersey.
Yes.
So they could have Julius Randle game-worn items later in the year. So they were at one point very committed to this. That's not to say, I'm not going to say either way what they are now, but I think we know more about that. But they were very, very persistent with that. So the plan, I imagine, would be, let's go get some jerseys from Ben Simmons. Well, then Ben Simmons rolls his ankle, breaks his foot in the preseason, and he ends up not playing games the entire 2016 season. So there goes their memorabilia plan. So what are they going to do? Well, people were kind of deciding, like you said, we've got to figure out what is that card that people are going to be able to chase after. Like you said, the National Treasures base number to 99, it's accessible, but not as accessible. You can't go to Walmart and get that. Right. So it's not there's not much of a chase to it. You can't really get it easily. They were experimenting a lot with diamond cards around this time. It's the same thing. They just didn't make enough of them for it to be attainable and desirable at the same time. But still be a little bit of a chase. That's the thing. They want it to be a chase.
Yeah, you want it to be a chase, but at the same time, you want it to be that rookie that the average collector feels they have a chance to be able to pull. And, do the National Treasures and stuff, there's no chance for the average collector to have a chance to pull those. So, that's where I think they had to find something.
And then that's where it's funny. I looked back at some old blowout threads, and there was actually a poster that said, hopefully Panini can create an iconic Simmons chromium card. And, at Optic, was the first year of Optic. Yes. So it wasn't going to be Optic. Select has always kind of been the little brother to Prism, even though a lot of people like Select. It's not had the same prestige and popularity. And a really big thing here for basketball, it hasn't been in retail. Now, I think that's going to change this year, but up to this point, it has not been a retail product. So, people needed something that they could chase. And once again, that goes back to what's out there. Prism was out there, and it was still limited enough. I believe the estimated print run for silvers that year was probably somewhere around between 600 and 800. We don't know for certain, but we think it was in that range. which that's actually a big jump on the first couple years of Prism.
And so, why do you think people decided to settle on Prism? Do you think it was the exclusive going away and Topps Chrome going away? Do you think it was to fill that void with, Topps Chrome was, the basketball card, or some would argue finest, but Topps Chrome really was the card. And then when the exclusives went away, you lost that amazing Chromium stock product. What do you think made people, jump on that Prism and land on the silver being
right.
of all things?
Well, I think you're on the right track. We didn't have any Chromium cards after the 2009-2010 Topps.
Yeah.
The first Chromium card after that was Prism, which started in 2012. So we went several years without a Chromium card. I think people wanted something that had some lineage. So, there are not a lot of Panini products that go all the way back. The one that does stick out is National Treasures, which is part of why it's so popular today. But Like we said, that's not as attainable. And really the base card's not all that appealing. So It had to be the right combination of accessible, desirable, and attainable. And I think the silver, at that point, we were still very much, I don't want to say we, but a lot of people were anti-base, right? We want something that's a chase.
Yeah.
And I know we're swinging back to that whole anti-base sentiment, but people kind of shunned base for a long time in the hobby.
Oh, yeah.
If you like base, though, collect it. I have no issues with that. But as far as chase cards, we were not chasing base. So what's the next step up? Well, you've got your silver. And that's I think how we kind of ended up there. And then really that launched if you remember in around 2018, 2019, the LeBron silver push, when those blew up out of seemingly out of nowhere. Well, people were going back and buying the refractors from Topps Chrome, and then they moved into Prism. So all of that kind of culminated, and here we are today.
It's interesting to look back and see how much that one move and those other moves, like you said, there were moves and there was a movement heading towards, we were in that era of, I always talk about how we were in that era where every single sport had the old vets, on their way out, while the new young guns that were actually legitimately good were all coming in every sport. You had your Acuñas and your Sotos, you had your Cats, you had your Wiggins, you had your Ben Simmons, it didn't matter what sport it was, you had incredible youth talent coming in while vet talent was still doing incredible stuff. So you had an amazing time in the hobby, and it's incredible to me to look back and think, if he doesn't sign that deal, does Prism become what it is today? If he doesn't sign that deal and there are autographs, does it continue to be just the normal thing? Does Prism truly catch on past retail? Does Mosaic even exist? There's a lot of things where it's, would this continue had it not been for this Ben Simmons deal? What do you think?
Well, here's another question. I hate to answer a question with a question, but here's another question for you. I think that I actually thought Upper Deck was very close to signing Zion to a similar deal, and I think they wanted to, and I think I think it all fell apart. And actually, I think Topps was gunning for him too, which is why there was a botched 2019 Topps Chrome product.
Yeah.
So there were several companies that were gunning for Zion. I don't even know what Panini ended up paying him, but I figure it's pretty substantial.
Topps was heavily in the running because you saw the Tyler Hero Chrome autographs that don't exist, that were probably thrown in a river somewhere.
Just for reference, I own one card from that set. It's the only one that I've ever seen in person. Someone bought it off of a player on Instagram.
Okay, so he had to buy it off of the player. That would be
right. So it's not. I own a card that's not supposed to exist. But if anyone ever doubts that set exists, I got it.
I want you to send me a picture because if you don't mind, when we're done, because I want a picture of this card. Now I'm going to start DMing players that could possibly be in that set. But yeah, they were definitely gunning hard for Zion, and that would have been another massive shift in in the hobby, and who knows what that could have done with everything. It would have been interesting. It would have opened up the door. I think that type of move might have even been big enough to open up the door to talking about possible non-exclusives, at least in basketball. Right. There aren't many moves that could cause that to happen, but I think that's one of them that could maybe say, maybe we look at this a little differently.
Well, and for all the people that are very gung ho on I have to have something that's licensed. Well, look at your Steph Curry Topps rookie and James Harden Topps rookies. Technically they're licensed, but they sure don't look like it.
Exactly. I know. I laugh at a lot of it because I love collecting unlicensed stuff. We just busted some absolute baseball and let her rip and pulled like the coolest Wander Franco. And like I look at all of these cards and 4 of them, the way they're standing, you can't even see the logo, even if they didn't even have to airbrush the logo out because of the picture you choose. I mean, if smart.
It just got to be done well. That's the key thing, and a lot of them aren't. But there's some stuff out there that's really good.
Yeah, and I mean that's all it takes in terms of the unlicensed era. But it's definitely interesting to take a look back. So now fast forward, here we are, 2021. We're here. We've got a crazy last year in the hobby. Ups and downs, left and rights, and about 50 circles. But what do you think of the modern hobby right now? What is your opinion, at least in the basketball aspect? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I've had to shift. It's just a constant. I'm having to shift constantly.
Yes.
But as a result of that, there are 2 approaches you can take to this. If you're dead set on collecting the way you've been collecting, you probably had a bad year, and I feel for those people. Right? I'm not I'm not here to shun anyone, because you know what you like and you want to collect it, and you've been able to do that for years. There was no warning, and then all this happened. So I feel for you. However, if you're willing to shift, if you're able to shift, if you think in ways that allow you to shift, or if you allow yourself to think in those ways, I've had a blast this last year. Now, would I have preferred the way everything was this year? Probably not. I liked the way I was collecting, but I'm chasing sets now that at the time I took them for granted. Oh, they'll always be there. No big deal. Well, now is that time where I dig in, because yes, they are here. They're still here. People aren't, a lot of people aren't chasing some of the things that I'm chasing. So now for me, that's the time. And I've got a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Absolutely. And like you said, the biggest thing about the modern hobby, I repeatedly say it on this show, is pivot, alter, move. You've got to adapt. You've got to adjust. You've got to, if you're going to be set in your ways, that's fine, but be prepared. If the hobby shifts and it shifts in the opposite direction, be prepared to, lose, at least in terms of financially, in that aspect. But, in this hobby, if you're in it for anything outside of simply buying a pack and collecting, it is all about adapting, all about, shifting. And it's a constant thing. I mean, it happens every 1 or 2 months. I mean, even less than that, you're having to shift your approach to how you're selling rookies, to grading cards, or whatever it may be. Whatever it could be, there's a constant shift. And I just implore all listeners to always, be looking at those trends. And when you see those shifts coming, make those moves. Don't be hesitant. Make the move.
Definitely.
So, all right, man. Well, I really greatly appreciate you coming on the show. It's been really quite interesting to take a look back at 2016 and the era that was. But before I let you go, man, let everybody know where they can find you, where they can hear the awesome show, because really, man, you put out some incredible content, and I love listening to it every single episode that comes on. So let everybody know where they can find it, man.
Yeah, so I am on Instagram is @WaxMuseumPodcast. I'm on Twitter @WaxMuseumPC. You can find new episodes of the Wax Museum podcast every Thursday, wherever you get your podcast. I try and make it easily accessible. I'm also working on my YouTube channel. That maybe is not as consistent, but now that it's summer, I'm trying to be more consistent. Just search Wax Museum Podcast on there, and you should be able to find me.
Awesome. Well, before I let you go, one final question. Two final questions. One, will you be at the National?
I will be there. Yes.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We will definitely be meeting up. And number two, who's your pick for the NBA championship? I can't let you go without a pick.
If you ask me at the start, I think I would have said Lakers over Nets or Nets over Lakers, but there's no team that really sticks out to me. I would probably choose the Suns right now.
Yeah.
They now that I see that campaign is back and Chris Paul is back, I'm going to go with the Suns.
That's my pick right now as well. I think CP is going to get reacclimated into the lineup enough, and they've got the team. I think Ayton's proving to be a pure superstar, and the potential that he showed, in college that took him a couple of years to develop and took a Chris Paul to get there But I'm going with the Suns also. But Kyle, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Look forward to seeing you at the National, and we'll talk soon, my man.
All right. Thanks, Drew.
And once again, I'd like to thank Kyle from Wax Museum Podcast for joining the show. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you're new in the hobby or weren't around in 2016, it was a very interesting time in the hobby. And it felt a lot like this last massive surge, just on a much smaller level because there weren't that many people into it. The cards weren't going up that much, silvers and things started going up and things started to become valuable enough that you would want to open the boxes, and box breaking took off because of that. And look at 2016 and box breaking. That's when it really started to take off. It's all no coincidence. It all happened around this Ben Simmons and this phenomenon of these players that we were talking about. But to take a look back at it and to see the effect it has on it now, to see the effect it's had on the hobby is interesting. It's quite interesting to me. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and definitely check out the Wax Museum Podcast because this man puts out some absolutely incredible content. He does a lot of stuff that I absolutely love outside of just a show, which is tracking patches, tracking patch swaps in the National Treasures, things like that. A lot of good for the hobby, and is one of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to basketball that I know, especially when it comes to 90s and 2000s basketball. It's just, the man is a walking dictionary when it comes to that stuff, and so it's always a pleasure to have him on the show. So thanks again, Kyle, for joining. Before we wrap it up today, guys, kind of on that same line and something that Kyle would be taking a look at. I don't know if you saw it earlier this week, and I don't know necessarily how it happened, but there's definitely some shadiness going on here on multiple fronts. Okay, so PWCC opens their vault and lists a BGS graded Steph Curry RPA from Crown Royal that is an absolutely beautiful card. It ended up being graded a 9.5 by Beckett, and the edges got the 9. Okay, so the auction happens, everything goes smoothly, no issues with the auction. Auction ends a little over $12K. So buyer pays, and PWCC sends the card, everything on the up and up. Buyer gets the card, and the back of the card, now Crown Royal, I don't know if you're very familiar with this, but Crown Royal's cut it's cut on top like a crown. And so there's a lot of die cut design to it. Well, the back edge, one of the back edges literally looks like it was peeled up off the card. Like it looks like it was peeled up. This damage was tremendous. How in the world it got a 9 on edges is beyond me, because it is tremendous damage that does not happen. Like, you couldn't shake this card as hard as you wanted to in a BGS case and have it do that type of damage. It's just not possible with the sleeve and the way they encapsulate everything. So that makes me wonder, A, is this a card swap? I mean, was this a card swap, or were they just incredibly generous in giving that a 9? Since they knew everything else was so good, and they knew that would drop it down to a 9.5. I don't know what they thought with the edges when they were grading that initially, or if the card was swapped out. But the problem is when you look at the PWCC listings, their photos don't show the damage. It looks, and if you look, I do a lot of photo work. If you zoom in very, very good on a good computer with good zoom on a good program, you can see some pixelation that looks like that may have been airbrushed over, and that some damage may have been hidden, and that is an issue. Now, I hope that's not the case. I hope PWCC wasn't the person that did it. I don't know their process. I don't know if they take all the pictures or if the buyer is instructed to take a picture a certain way, but the damage was absolutely hidden from the buyer, and it turned a card that the buyer paid $12K for. I mean, that card with this type of damage, no joke, is probably maybe 4 to 6 tops. And so, I mean, it's a significant change in value. I mean, this is a big one. This is a big hit to this buyer, and I've looked for PWCC's replies. I reached out, got no answer as of yet. If I get an answer, I'll update on social media on what their comment on the situation is, because this did not happen in transit, because the box was in perfect shape, everything was fine. And 2, when you see the damage, it's not possible for it to happen in transit. But the photos are what concern me, because even if you're saying, okay, some of this happened in transit, it would have had to have already been there to begin with. And in these photos, the card looks absolutely 100% flawless on the back. And so, a couple of really, really weird things going on with that card, guys. Check it out if you can. I'll put a link up in the comments of this week's post so you guys can check it out. But go take a look at this Steph Curry and let me know what you guys think in the comments of this week's episode, because I really want to know, because it's quite interesting. I don't know if a grader was just being very, very generous when he graded that, if the card was swapped, and then did they doctor the images of the picture, or what exactly is going on here? Something fishy is going on. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm sure the guys at Blowout and those detectives will figure it out soon, but as of now, we're still trying to figure everything out. But once again, high-end cards right now, I saw them in Philly. I saw 3 Kobe medals that would have passed 99 out of 100 people that held these cards would buy these cards instantly if you gave them a good deal in the $20,000-$30,000 range. All 3 of them were fakes, and all of them were Fleer medals. And all of them had damage that looked like, normal wear and tear type of deal. If you haven't handled hundreds of thousands of these Fleer medals, you're buying these cards in a heartbeat. The fakes are getting tremendous. They're out there like crazy. They're at shows. They're online. They are everywhere. Guys, do your due diligence. Do it as much as you can. Now, I know with PWCC, you expect them to do their due diligence too, and you expect to be able to trust them, but things slip through the cracks. Maybe you can trust PWCC 95% of the time. I'm not going to give you my opinion on that, but there is that 5%, and so you always want to protect yourself. So do your due diligence as much as you can, and it's always been one of my rules. I mean, if it's a big card that I want, I reach out to the person, the eBay seller, and try and do it off eBay in person, some type of deal where it's a little more, I can take a look at the card, I can see the card, as opposed to just plopping down a ton of money on an auction on something I can't see. But, that's probably because I don't have near the amount of money that these people that are bidding $12K on just a Curry on a random Tuesday night are. So But guys, that's going to do it for episode 123 of Let Me Get That Potograph. Once again, I'd like to thank my awesome sponsors, Denver Card Shows, Vintage Breaks, all of my other awesome sponsors. Could not do this show without you guys. You guys seriously help run this show. And of course, if you haven't heard, we do have a new Instagram exclusive show. It's another spin-off show of Let Me Get That Potograph. It's part of Let Me Get That Potograph Entertainment. It is sports card content crossover, where we sit down with other content creators, other podcasters, web shows, both in the hobby, maybe Pokemon, maybe anything. And we sit down and we discuss, what led them to create content, their thoughts on their content process, their creative process, all types of just fun stuff, just laid back fun stuff, and bringing the podcasting and the web series and the whole content creation community back together again. So make sure to check out the new show. We do have our first episode out with Chris from Card Ladder and House of Jordans, and our second episode, which is dropping today as well, with the man himself, Pat Geek. So looking forward to that one. It's going to be an awesome one. And of course, Let Her Rip. A lot of updates on Let Her Rip. Card Ladder, of course, becoming the official analytics sponsor. We're going to be we're narrowing down on a new co-host. We've had a couple of guest co-hosts. I'll probably do a couple solo as we finalize who the new co-host is. We have a couple of different options that we're debating on right now, but Let Her Rip will have a new co-host, and all I can say is you guys are going to love her or him. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but you guys are going to love them. I can promise you that. Make sure to check out Hobby Hotline as well every single Saturday, 11 a.m., guys. Some of the very best content creators, as we've been talking content the last minute and a half, 2 minutes. Some of the very best content creators in the hobby on the show every single week. Make sure to call in, ask any questions you have, comment on any of the topics, or just call in to say what's up. But make sure to check out Hobby Hotline as well, 11 a.m. every single Saturday on Facebook Live and YouTube. But guys, that's going to do it. So until next time, you know the deal. Keep ripping those packs, pulling those hits, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace! Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.